Hey guys, we have 2 weeks left. Well, 2.5. We are going to start the next section, which is parts 3 and 4. So it's respiration, respiratory system, excretory system. That's part 3. And then part 4 is digestion. So basically, we're going to do like a body system a day, and then we'll do some sort of homework or a quiz or something after that. And then next week, we'll basically just be finishing up the systems. So after that, we have like endocrine system and reproductive system and whatnot. Okay, so today we're going to do cellular respiration and the respiratory system. So I posted this. I don't know why it took so long for me to think to post a PDF. Some of my chem kids were complaining that the diagrams weren't showing up. So if the diagrams weren't showing up for you, now you can just print a PDF. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so respiration is a process in which energy stored in the chemical bonds of glucose is released for use in cells. This is the definition that the Regents exam tends to use. So basically, when you exercise, our cells need to get energy out from the food that we eat. So that's where they're getting the energy from. So we breathe faster because we need oxygen in order to get most of the energy out of glucose molecules, and because we need to get rid of carbon dioxide produced during respiration. So we're having cellular respirations occurring, we're making carbon dioxide, and so we have to breathe faster because we also need to get the carbon dioxide out because we don't want our cells to have too much carbon dioxide. We sweat to cool down, and because water is produced during respiration. So you also need to get rid of that. There's the mitochondria. Okay, so there's 2 types of respiration. So the first one is aerobic respiration, which is like the normal one we talk about when oxygen is available. Plants and animals, most living things, use this type of respiration. So the what? It's aerobic cellular respiration. This is the word equation. So we have oxygen plus glucose with the use of enzymes produces carbon dioxide, water, adenosine triphosphate is ATP. So you could just write ATP. And this is the chemical equation. So we have O2 plus C6H12O6, that's glucose, produces CO2 plus H2O plus ATP. And this is where most of our energy is produced. You make like 36 to 38 ATP per cycle. This occurs all the time. So one of the kind of misconceptions like in the plant unit is that photosynthesis occurs during the day and cellular respiration occurs only at night. No, this occurs constantly. It occurs in the mitochondria, and the purpose is to release energy stored in the bonds of glucose for use in life processes. Okay, flip to the next page. Oh, jeepers. Okay. All right, so anaerobic fermentation is when no oxygen is available. So muscle cells use this, and it's called lactic acid fermentation. The word equation is glucose, and see how there's no oxygen here? Glucose produces carbon dioxide, and then instead of water, we make lactic acid and energy. And this produces energy, but not that much, only about 2 ATPs. It occurs only if no oxygen is available in the mitochondria, and the purpose is to release energy, same purpose, release energy stored in the bonds of glucose to use for life processes. Okay, so I want you guys to push pause for a second, and before we do that, push pause and try to do the practice Regents questions. You do not need to do number 3, so cross out number 3. Okay, so welcome back. So question number 1, it gives you a diagram. It says which molecule is represented by X. That one is ATP. So the waste products would be like carbon dioxide and water, and then ATP is what's used for cellular activities. In number 2, so mitochondria, the release of which substance is represented by the arrow. So what's going out after cellular respiration is carbon dioxide, 3. Okay, skip question 3, move on to number 4. Which substance is the most direct source of energy that an animal uses for the synthesis of materials? So ATP is what is used for cellular function or life processes. All right, on the next page, number 5, which statement concerning ATP and activity in the cell is correct? 3, ATP is produced most efficiently by structure C, which is mitochondria. 6, energy from organic molecules can be stored in ATP molecules as a direct result of the process of 1, cellular respiration. And then question 7 is a short answer question. Identify an organelle in cell A that is the site of autotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition, remember, is making your own food. So that's a chloroplast. In 8, identify the organelle labeled as X. It's pointing to a ribosome. You might have said the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which has ribosomes on it. And then number 9, both cell A and cell B use energy released from ATP. So if you didn't do questions 10 through 11 or 10 through 13, push pause again and try to finish those. Then when you come back, let's go over them. So number 10, identify one type of organism that carries out process 1. So process 1 is changing carbon dioxide and water into simple compounds like glucose. So that would be photosynthesis, which is done by plants. 11, explain why process 2 is essential to humans. So process 2 is complex compounds being broken down into simple compounds. This is like digestion, and it's to make food molecules or nutrients that can be absorbed. And then 12, process 3 is simple compounds like glucose changing to carbon dioxide and water, which is cellular respiration. And 13, letter X represents ATP. Okay, so let's keep going on, finishing respiration, then starting the respiratory system. Okay, so just as a comparison, aerobic occurs in most living things, anaerobic occurs in our muscle cells. Aerobic occurs in the mitochondria, so does anaerobic. For reactants, in aerobic, you have glucose plus oxygen. The oxygen is what makes it aerobic, and then glucose for anaerobic. Energy yield is high for aerobic, 36 to 38, and low for anaerobic, 2 ATPs. Products, CO2 and water, and then lactic acid and CO2, which you don't want building up in our muscles. We're part of the muscle fatigue. Okay, so moving right along, the respiratory system. So this is all related to how we get oxygen into our blood and get carbon dioxide out of our blood. So the pathway of air occurs in the nose, the mouth, the throat, the trachea, and then the lungs. The nose is lined with a mucous membrane and cilia. So remember, cilia are like little hairs. Mucous membranes moisten the air, and cilia traps dust and bacteria. So it's like your first line of defense. The sinuses are the hollow spaces above the nasal cavity. It can help to humidify air. These sinuses right here, the maxillary sinuses, where when I have a sinus infection, that's where I feel it most. Like you feel a lot of pressure there. It might feel a little bit better if you push on it. Okay, the pharynx is the passageway leading from the mouth to the esophagus and the trachea. The larynx is located at the top of the trachea. It holds the vocal cords, and vocal cords vibrate to produce sounds. Okay, so the trachea is the passageway from the pharynx to the bronchi. It's held open by cartilage rings, you can see in this picture right here. It's covered by the epiglottis during swallowing. So why would you need to cover the trachea when you're swallowing food? Because you don't want food to get down there. Okay, bronchi branch off of the trachea. So these are the big branches off of the trachea. They're also held open by cartilage rings, and then each bronchi extends into the lungs. The lungs are a large spongy organ that's located in the chest. It's optimized for gas exchange. So it's built in a way to help gas get in and out. Okay, so the alveoli is the functional unit in the lungs that helps do that. So that's what helps do the gas exchange. It's tiny air sacs that have thin, moist membranes that allow for like diffusion. It's surrounded by a network of capillaries. All right. So moving right along. So movement, so I think I skipped to, hold on. Okay, so this is down a little bit further on page 6. So movements of diaphragm and rib cage cause pressure changes in your chest activity, which is inspiration. So breathing air in, the chest expands, and the diaphragm moves down. Breathing air out, the chest contracts, and the diaphragm moves up. All right, respiratory disorders could be bronchitis, which is inflammation of the bronchial tubes and membranes, asthma, and allergic response. The bronchial tubes constrict. Emphysema is the alveoli enlarges and breaks down, and pneumonia is when fluid accumulates in the alveoli. Okay, so I just found those slides that I was missing. So if you can go back up to the top of page 6. So moving gases into the bloodstream is the goal of the respiratory system. So when you inhale, the oxygen passes from the alveoli to the blood. So you can see these are alveoli to blood. When you exhale, and it happens by diffusion, when you exhale, carbon dioxide passes from the blood to the alveoli by diffusion. Okay, so gases move by diffusion, which is transport from high to low concentrations. It's a type of passive transport. Capillaries are the thin-walled tubes of the circulatory system, and alveoli are the thin-walled sacs of the respiratory system. So because they're thin, they allow for the diffusion of the gases in and out. So this is just an example. When oxygen goes down, the lungs make more oxygen go in, so that it's like a feedback loop. Okay, so that's it for today. And then tomorrow we will stop and talk about the excretory system.